The Phillies signed outfielder Adolis Garcia to a one-year, $10 million deal. And I can't tell you how much I love this contract. I think it's a great gamble by Dave Dombrowski. And I'll tell you why on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now the number one sports podcast network, Locked On Phillies, your number one place for daily Philadelphia Phillies content. Appreciate you joining us. You might know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic doing sports talk radio here in Philly for over 6 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for the past 4 seasons, and this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. The Phillies have finally added to the outfield, and I really love what they did, signing Adolis Garcia to a one-year, $10 million deal. There are so many reasons to love this contract, and we're going to start out breaking down all of those. We're also then going to take a look at what it means for Nick Castellanos going forward, because Adolis Garcia is going to be playing right field for the Phillies this year, it appears. And then we'll wrap up with Mailbag Monday. We got some questions on the outfield. So it's a very outfield-heavy episode today here of Locked On Phillies. And it's not your typical, well, okay, do they re-sign Harrison Bader? Where does Justin Crawford play? Is Brandon Marsh a starter? No, for all the folks who said the Phils are just going to run it back and the team's going to look exactly the same, maybe hold your horses a little bit. Now, we saw a move like this last year, and it was the Phillies acquiring Max Kepler. Max Kepler did not work out for the Philadelphia Phillies. He had some moments in the postseason. He had a couple stretches of the season where he looked usable, but overall, he was a large disappointment for the Philadelphia Phillies, looking for some outfield pop. And now you bring in Adolis Garcia to fill that role. Obviously, this means Kepler not coming back. We already knew that. Free agent, no plans by the Phillies to re-sign him. That was kind of an understood thing. But now you bring in a right fielder, and I believe that Adolis Garcia could be an everyday player for the Philadelphia Phillies. But he might not have to be. There's a platoon reason why I like this deal too. But who is he if you're not familiar with his game? Well, you must have missed the 2023 postseason, because he was an absolute force for the Texas Rangers en route to their World Series title that year. Demolished the Astros in the ALCS. Power hitting, right-handed bat. And he is a guy that is just purely going to try and hit home runs, at least at the plate. Right? The average is not great. He is a 2-time All-Star. He's a former Gold Glove winner. He is, like I just told you, ALCS proven veteran. He won the MVP of that series against the Astros back in 2023. This past year, he hit 227 with 19 home runs. Those numbers at face value aren't anything crazy because, well, he's kind of fallen off the past couple of seasons. 25 wasn't great. 24 wasn't great. Even though he did have 25 home runs back in 2024, he only batted 224. The year that really people are going to remember from his time in Texas is 2023. When they won the World Series, he hit 245 and had 39 home runs. Like, yes, Max Kepler, you could look back in his career, like I think it was 2018, where he had a 36 home run season. That doesn't mean that Adolis Garcia is now going to come to Philadelphia and hit nearly 40 bombs for this team. He's not that player right now. But the Phillies go out and give a one-year, $10 million deal to him to see if he can be again. Or heck, get us to 25 home runs. That's going to be more contribution for that corner outfield spot power-wise than Nick Castellanos gave you this past year. And you're going to get significantly better defense. That's the thing. For anyone who's looking at this and saying, well, his numbers power-wise don't really project to be much better than Nick Castellanos's. Well, you got to take the full package of player because Nick Castellanos was a defensive liability. I know I'm saying was, like he's not on the team anymore. We'll talk about that in our second segment today. But Nick Castellanos is not a plus defender in right field. Adolis Garcia is a Gold Glove winning defender in right field. So now you have Gold Glove caliber defense, a right-handed pop bat. That's the other reason that Adolis Garcia is not Max Kepler. Because while Kepler didn't work out, he was also a lefty. So he didn't really add that dynamic to the lineup of a right-handed power bat that could potentially protect guys like Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper. It's tough for them to protect each other because you could just throw a strong lefty reliever and the next thing you know, the middle of your lineup's at a disadvantage. Even with Kyle Schwarber's year this past year where he set a major league record for home runs, left-handed hitter on left-handed pitcher, it was still a weak spot for the Phillies, like a very noticeable weak spot that they didn't have a right-handed, middle of the order power bat to protect those guys. So you can't just throw lefties in there. And Adolis Garcia, I think, is a really great gamble. Now, this is not like you went out and got one of the great right fielders in baseball today. You didn't go get Cody Bellinger, Kyle Tucker. You didn't trade for Juan Soto. Let's be realistic about the level of player you're acquiring. There's a reason he's available for $10 million on a one-year contract. But I think it's partially an agreement between Garcia and the Phillies to say, hey, we believe in you. You believe in us. He could get a bigger contract in the future. He's not washed by any stretch of the imagination, age-wise at least. He's 32, which while it is on the older side compared to where your prime normally is, which is about 28 to 32, I'd say, in Major League Baseball, it's not like you're signing a 38-year-old guy where you're just hoping he can still walk around enough to play right field for you. No, he's still a very plus defender, can get to the gap, has a strong arm. And maybe the Phillies get a major gamble, hit the jackpot with this guy, right? Goes out. What would the jackpot be for Adolis Garcia? Go out and hit 230 and hit more than 25 home runs. That would be a game-changing right-handed bat to have in this lineup. And I know that's like sky-high expectations. That's not the expectation. That would be hitting the jackpot. But that could transform a lot of things for this team. So there are a million ways to be excited about Adolis Garcia. And it's not like he's transformative, right? Just at face value. Like I said, he's not one of the star players that were available in free agency this offseason. But once you sign Kyle Schwarber, you were never going to be in on any of those star players. You have to take a chance and say, okay, he's betting on himself taking a one-year deal. We're going to bet on him, giving him a chance to play often in right field. And I think this could be really mutually beneficial for both sides in this one. So he's not like Nick because he can play defense. He's not like Max because he's not a lefty. And he fits a need for the Philadelphia Phillies, which is that corner outfield righty, because prior to that, it would have been Brandon Marsh in right, and it would have been Justin Crawford in left, and it would have been Nick Castellanos probably traded, or you could have started Casty in right, Marsh in center, Crawford in left. But now the outfield picture has gotten even clearer, and that's because I think a perfect platoon partner for Adolis Garcia would be Brandon Marsh, if you wanted to do that. Brandon Marsh as a corner outfielder is a really quality fielder. And he put together a great stretch of the season last year after starting ice cold. If you end up wanting to platoon Marsh to get him at bats because you think he could be a valuable piece, or Garcia struggles at points to find his swing because we've seen that the past couple of years average-wise, I think a right field platoon of Adolis Garcia and Brandon Marsh, you could do a lot worse than that in baseball. And then you just say, okay, kid, Justin Crawford, you get everyday left field opportunities. And then you just got to sign somebody to play center field, which we're going to talk about Harrison Bader in our Mailbag Monday segment because somebody asked a question about where he's at with his offseason plan as far as free agency is concerned. Sounds like there may be something heating up with Harrison Bader. We're still waiting on JT. I don't know. A lot of stuff's going on right now. That's another nice thing. It's nice to see the Phillies go out and do this rather than just sit around and wait for JT to sign and let the market die off even more. We talked about that with relievers last week on one of our episodes. So I love the Adolis Garcia move. Don't dive too deep into the numbers and be like, oh, he hasn't hit for average well. Oh, this is down. That's down. You gave the guy a one-year, $10 million deal for a spot where you were trying to trade away a player and then potentially start a dude who can't hit left-handed pitching. This is just, he's a World Series champion. He's an ALCS MVP. He's a Gold Glove winner. He's a 2-time All-Star. Don't overthink this. This is a good gamble by Dave Dombrowski. He fits the profile of what you needed in the outfield as far as handedness and skill set with the bat in his hands. If it works out, awesome, your gamble hit. If it didn't, you didn't really put yourself financially capped by anything because it's just a one-year contract. I don't know how anyone can look at this and be like, yeah, I don't love it, unless you're the world's biggest Nick Castellanos fan. Speaking of Casty, we're going to talk about him coming up next because this just basically cements what we already knew, right? Is there any way that Nick Castellanos is still on this team for the 2026 season after you see them sign Adolis Garcia? I don't think so. And I'll tell you why as we continue today's episode. Let's talk about FanDuel first, though, because NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game. You're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. The Eagles are the perfect example. They go out and they beat the Raiders 31-0 yesterday. An absolute rout. The line on that game before it started was 11.5. The Eagles would have covered that by 20 points. But you might have realized as the game started, oh, maybe I want to jump in on this because you can't have confidence in the Eagles before a game. It was pretty evident pretty quick. The Birds weren't losing. They weren't going to keep it close. So those are the perfect examples of why betting live can be a major, major benefit to you. And FanDuel has such a sleek, easy-to-use interface. It's the best place to do it. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Let's talk about the Nick Castellanos part of the equation here. You may have heard me mention this before if you're one of our everydayers. I appreciate everybody who is an everydayer for Locked On Phillies. If you'd like to join part of that group, I'd love if you could subscribe to the YouTube. Yes, if you're just listening, you can watch the show as well on YouTube. And subscribing will get you notifications when new episodes are posted. It'll be in your YouTube algorithm. It doesn't cost you anything. It's like free and easy to do. But it'll keep you up to date on all the great stuff we put out here on Locked On Phillies, which is why I recommend people do it. And it helps us out as well. If you're not watching on YouTube, we're available wherever you get your podcasts in just regular audio form. And if you're just listening to the show, I would love if you could rate and review. I appreciate all of you for checking out Locked On Phillies. We may not be locked on Nick Castellanos for much longer, though, because with the signing of Adolis Garcia, Nick Castellanos is good as gone. Right now, you're bringing up one of your top prospects to play left field, Justin Crawford. That seems to be just about set in stone. He had an incredible year last year at AAA. It was very surprising he was not called up last season. There's no way that he doesn't break camp with the major league team. I just don't see it happening. Like, they want him to have the left field spot, and Dave Dombrowski has been pretty candid about that. So there's one of your outfielders. You have Brandon Marsh still on this team, and unless you trade him, which I don't know if you're trying to trade Nick Castellanos, which has been actively reported, you're probably not going to try and trade both of those guys. So I'd imagine Brandon Marsh is not a likely trade piece for the Phillies this offseason unless something really crazy becomes available. So you already have Brandon Marsh, and then you go out and sign Adolis Garcia. You have 3 corner outfielders on this team already, and all 3 of them, you could argue, deserve better opportunity than Nick Castellanos. All are much better defenders. One is a rookie, so you want to get him playing time. And the other 2 in right field, and Marsh and Garcia, I think they have better offensive profiles if you platoon them than Nick Castellanos does individually. So, see you, Casty. I'm sorry. And I don't mean this to be cold or anything. Like, I'm a Nick Castellanos guy. I've tried to defend him when I believed he deserved defending throughout his time here in Philadelphia. He's a better player than a lot of this fan base gives him credit for. He is talented. He could be a piece on a team that wins. The Phillies' issues in the postseason have not been Nick Castellanos. Actually, he's been one of their more clutch and continual playoff performers over the past 4 years. Think about the Atlanta Braves series. I mean, he was really good in that Mets series. And when I say the Atlanta Braves series, the second one, but even in the first one, he was a big part of that World Series run. It's not like he got dragged to that. Nick Castellanos has come up clutch for the Phillies a lot. And I think when he's eventually moved, because I believe it's a when and not an if, I think there's going to be a lot of people who are like, yeah, we're better off without Castellanos in the fan base. And then I think a decade down the line, we're going to look back at Nick Castellanos' time in Philadelphia a lot differently. Just in the moment, he does a lot of things that frustrate you, whether that's defensively, whether it's the aloof answers and kind of the laissez-faire attitude, which I think is completely just misproported on Nick Castellanos. Like, I do think he cares about winning, cares about getting better, cares about helping his team out as much as possible. Or else, why else would he have been so upset that he was removed for a defensive replacement in Miami this year? That's where this initial rift between Nick Castellanos and Rob Thompson seemed to start. But this is not just a recap of the time of Nick Castellanos' Philly tenure, which I believe is coming to an end. No, it's also an explanation of why. There's just no way that you make this move with a somewhat disgruntled right fielder to bring in a starting right fielder and then say, yeah, but we're going to hang on to you. That would be the most toxic work environment possible, especially for a guy who was already complaining about stuff this past year. I'm not even blaming Casty for complaining. And maybe he was right. I know a lot of people feel like Rob Thompson doesn't have the best handle on the strategy of this team. So I don't know, if you're not a Rob Thompson guy, maybe you agree with Castellanos. But at the end of the day, he's not really in a good spot with the Phillies. And bringing in Garcia makes that even worse. This is an untenable situation. Could you imagine in the NFL, if you had a starting quarterback, you traded for another starting quarterback, what would that first guy think? Get me out of here. Why are you trading for that dude? That's essentially what this is for the Philadelphia Phillies. So Nick Castellanos, I imagine, will be moved. And the Phillies, per reports, are basically trying to force teams to take him, like trying to give him away. It's not about value, you have to see, right? It's not like Nick Castellanos is just in the discard pile for the Philadelphia Phillies, even though they probably won't get much of anything back for him. The reason that it's so tough for the Phillies to move Nick Castellanos is because he has one more $20 million deal on his contract. The Phillies just spent a lot of money on Kyle Schwarber. They're trying to cut down the amount of money that they would have to eat out of Nick Castellanos' contract. And that's what the big holding point is on this deal. Because let's just use, I don't know, the Cincinnati Reds, because they're on my mind because I mentioned Kyle Schwarber. Like, let's use the Cincinnati Reds as an example. Say they call up the Phillies and say, yeah, we're interested in trading for Nick Castellanos. We want you to eat all $20 million of the salary, which is unrealistic, but you get it. And the Phillies are like, no, we're not paying for him entirely to play for your team. The Reds counter and they say, okay, we'll just pay 18. You save $2 million. The Phillies are like, that's not a good enough deal for us. We're paying $18 million for him to play somewhere else. So I think there's a negotiation going on between teams of like, yeah, we like Nick Castellanos. We think he's a quality Major League Baseball player, but eating an amount of his salary is something the Phillies are going to try and do as little of as possible. And to move him at this point in his career would probably require them, I would imagine they'll have to eat like $12 million approximately of Nick Castellanos' final $20 million deal. The other team would pay $8 million. That's where I would guess the sweet spot is for a deal like this. And that's clearly a sticking point for teams around baseball. They don't want to pay $8 million for Nick Castellanos. They don't want to give up prospects for Nick Castellanos. And it's just a sticky situation, age-wise and contract-wise. I imagine it's going to get fixed. Because as I've been saying throughout this entire segment, there's no way for the Phillies to make this work anymore with Casty. There just isn't. There's not a world where he comes back and sits the bench? Platoons with Justin Crawford? We have a 3-man platoon in right field? Like, in what world? Nick Castellanos, former multi-time All-Star, sits the bench and pinch hits once a week? It's not going to happen, folks. So now it's on Dave Dombrowski, who has just showed his hand to find a way to move Casty. And that's the other thing. The market might get tougher now. Because if I'm another team calling the Phillies about acquiring Nick Castellanos, I'm going to say, you can't keep him. So you better eat more of that contract. He's burning a hole in your pocket. You got to get rid of this guy. So I'm not going to make any concessions when it comes to how we get this trade done. So once you show your hand like this, and Dave Dombrowski has just done that, it may become tougher to make a deal. Maybe that means he feels like he has a pretty good handle on the market for Castellanos and has a plan for how to move on from him. So we'll see that in the coming weeks. I'd imagine the sooner that gets done, the better for all sides involved. So maybe by the end of the year, we will see Nick Castellanos on a different roster. But for right now, the one thing that I know about this is clear. There's no way Castellanos can play for the Phillies again this season. There's no way he fits into this outfield. There's no way his time in Philadelphia is not already over. But we have even more to talk about, if you can believe it, with the outfield. In our Mailbag Monday segment, we got 2 great questions on what's going on with the outfield. One, I got to see if this listener is an insider because someone asked about the right field spot. It's a beautiful thing. Perfect timing, isn't it? We'll talk about the outfield even more with some listeners sending questions as we continue today's episode. Let's talk about game time first, though, because the World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. Just think about it. This event is months away. I just had my first person that I ran into the other day that said, I got tickets to go see this team in the World Cup. And I'm like, oh, well, that's why you got to use Game Time, because these tickets are already going fast. And with Game Time, you can track price drops in real time. You can get alerts when great seats open, and you can buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Plus, you still get all of the great Game Time features. The 100% Game Time guarantee that you're getting authentic tickets every time. The view from your seat that you get to see before you purchase. And, of course, you're going to get the opportunity to get the best deals possible with zone deals and special pop-up deals. It's a great way to buy tickets to anything, not just sports, but every match, concert, or event. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go with our friends over at Game Time. All right, it's Mailbag Monday time, and we got a couple of great questions listener submitted. We do this every Monday, so it's a great chance for you to, if I'm missing something, if I haven't mentioned something that you want to hear about, maybe it's just been a week since we talked about how great Kyle Schwarber is. Whatever you want to ask about Phillies related, I would love to answer it for you in these segments that we do. So let's go through them today. And let's start with Sean Fitzpatrick, who had a very timely question for Mailbag Monday. This is from 20 hours ago. It was tweeted at me by Sean Fitzpatrick, one of our great listeners. And obviously, in that time, since the Phillies have gone out and signed Adolis Garcia to be their right fielder for 2026. And Sean asks, how does the right field situation shake out, in your opinion? Don't they have to make a trade? Are they going to platoon Weston Wilson or Brian De La Cruz with a lefty bat? Major concerns for me here. And I love answering this question because clearly what I think they're going to do with the right field position is they're going to go out and I would say they'll sign Adolis Garcia, formerly of the Texas Rangers, on a 1-year, $10 million deal. No, obviously we know now what's happened. So why am I still answering the question? Because of the way Sean asked it and the other options he was looking at. This was not a situation that necessarily had to end positively for the Phillies, their right field spot. Let's say they trade Castellanos, but it takes a while to do so. Then they get to the market late, and then you're, I don't know, not interested in any of the outfielders that are in your price range that would play right field for you. So maybe they would have platooned like Weston Wilson and Brandon Marsh in right field. If you're going to tell me you'd rather have Weston Wilson fill the role that Adolis Garcia is going to fill on this team coming up next year, I think you're crazy. Brian De La Cruz is a player they signed earlier this year, has some pop, can play outfield from the Miami Marlins, but like he's fallen off the face of the planet, and they signed him to a minor league deal. It's not like he's major league ready. Adolis Garcia is a multi-time All-Star and a World Series champion and a Gold Glover and all of these other things that while you can look at the numbers and be like, okay, well, He doesn't hit righties well. That's a problem as far as handedness, which is why I brought up platoon. But the big key is to protect Harper and Schwarber. Anyone who's looking at his number of strikeouts or his overall batting average, just think about what the alternatives were. I'll read you this again. Are they going to platoon Weston Wilson or Brian De La Cruz with a lefty bat? I'm not happy about either of those options. And I'm happy about the upside of Adolis Garcia. And also the mention of a potential trade there in right field, not to get rid of Nick Castellanos, but to acquire another one. This costs you no prospects to do. 1 year, $10 million is dirt cheap by current MLB standards. For a power hitting right-handed outfield bat, that's even better. So great question by Sean Fitzpatrick. I'm not sure how I would have answered it before this deal went down. I'm glad that it did, though, because there is your answer. The Phillies answered that one for you, not just me. And we also have a question from It's Kenobi on Twitter. And they ask, I truly want to see Bader back on the team. We lack an outfield. Can we sign him for less than 3 years? Maybe you feel differently today with the Garcia signing as far as lacking an outfield. Now I think you have 3 really nice upside players in Brandon Marsh, Adolis Garcia, and Justin Crawford. And I'd like to see Harrison Bader back. I really would. Center field is still the number one question positionally for this team. Catcher, I guess you would put up there as well, but I'm living in the world where JT Realmuto comes back. So if JT resigns, how much tougher does that make it to re-sign Bader? We'd have to know what his market is before we can determine that. So I'm doing a little research, seeing where exactly people are projecting Harrison Bader to go and how much for. And it sounds like recently the market has softened a little bit on Harrison Bader. He wants 3 years. Recent reports are guessing that he's not going to get those 3 years. And if the Phillies can get Bader on a 2-year deal, that's a much more attractive option. They would have liked Schwarber on a 4-year deal, had to go up because the market price was up. They want JT on a 2-year deal, might have to go up to 3, depending on where the market is. I really hope they don't. Harrison Bader, though, he might not get another option from another team that's a 3-year deal. So that brings the Phillies back in on the market. The softer it gets, the better chance the Phillies are willing to pay that price. And it would probably be right around, I want to say $25 million would be the total cost of that. He just turned down a $10 million club option this past year with the Philadelphia Phillies, or I guess it was a mutual club player option. If you're going to turn that down, you're going to want your AAV to be above that. So 25 puts you at $12.5 million per year. Gets an extra $2.5 million on what he would have made. He gets another year on the contract. I think that's a good deal for both sides, as long as no other team is out there trying to steal him and offering him a 3-year deal. So I need Bader back in center field at this point. I really do. I think he would fit really well alongside Justin Crawford and Adolis Garcia. We already know he fits well alongside Brandon Marsh. Could you imagine that defensive outfield? Justin Crawford, a plus defending prospect. Harrison Bader, a Gold Glove caliber center fielder when he's at his best. Adolis Garcia, a Gold Glove caliber right fielder when he's at his best. Brandon Marsh, who I think is still a very above average corner outfielder, not Gold Glove level because he hasn't accomplished that yet, but that would be amazing. And you have an upside on an offensive profile on all 4 of those players. Is the Phillies outfield going to be a strike this year if they re-sign Harrison Bader? That might be a conversation we have this week. But can we sign him for less than 3 years? It sounds like that's becoming more realistic by the day. Only the market truly knows. I'm not on the phone with Dave Dombrowski talking about this daily, so we'll have to see. But I lean towards that being more of a possibility, and that is something that I'd be really excited about seeing the Phillies doing, even though I was worried about them paying him when the offseason first began. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. So thank you very much for the questions from Mailbag Monday. I always appreciate you chiming in with what you want me to talk about. Now, as of today, we are heading into our off-season scheduling, which means we're only going to be putting out 3 episodes a week. We're past the winter meetings, and we're kind of going into a little bit of hibernation mode. But we're still going to put out great content 3 days a week. We're going to have our instant reaction videos to any big news, and we're going to have a bunch of fun stuff going on. So don't worry. We're just slowing down a little bit because it is the off season, but you'll still be getting reaction to all the big news, the hypothetical questions you send me, all of our normal content here on Locked On Phillies. So I appreciate you always tuning in, or if this is your first time, thank you for joining us. Once again, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and also the #1 sports podcast network. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that really helps us out. And I will talk to you on Wednesday on our next episode of Locked On Phillies.